Good to go. Okay. Good evening, guys. This is Ken at Tortoise Capital with a nightly strategy podcast for May 11th, 2020. So let's see what we have on a nice Monday. Okay, so you can see yesterday, Friday, we had a really strong close to the week. Closed near the top of the range, and that was at the high of the really 8-day look back, and it was pushing near the top of a 10-day high. Had some negative sounding news over the weekend, and there was a regular sized gap down. It gapped inside Friday's range, so it's an orderly opening. It sold off briefly and then kind of grounded its way northward to push through Friday's high, threatened briefly the 10-day high, and then sold off in an orderly way into the close. And basically, it looked a lot like Friday, with the exception of maybe just another dollar or so of upward pushing range. We'll see that the leaders from Friday were the leaders today in technology area. So those big, large caps are pulling that market north. There was some good news from Gilead. And now looking at the 10-day trading frame, here's our 10-day high. That's now 9 days old. So tomorrow that will still be the acting 10-day high, but starting Wednesday, it's either going to be today's high or whatever we can get to tomorrow. So we're pushing near the top of that. The 10-day low is still 6 days old, so that's going to be anchored in place. The dragon has been behaving well as it started low and is kind of steaming its way northward in an orderly fashion, and the projection still looks good, pointing up. The PSAR stop raises up a little one step to here, and this is that PSAR extension that forecasts what that PSAR is going to keep looking like as long as the underlying buying pressure remains in place. So there's some a little more room now. It was getting close towards the end of last week to really test, but it kind of voted up Thursday and Friday, and it held on to those gains, and it stayed north of the upper skin of the dragon. So this was a workmanlike effort today, and it closed pretty well. To the upside, we're looking at the high of the day here. The 10-day high is also the 30-day high at 295 and some change. We'll see the RL30 is expanding and pointing up. So that's the health of the trend, and that's still favorable. And the next stop after the 10-day high is really nothing until we get to 299.38, which is the RL270 long-term fair value. Okay. On the downside, we have the low of the day of today and really Friday, and that's the upper skin of the dragon and the edge of the river at Z1. So there is a confluence, if we can put it that way, of support in this 290-ish, that nice round number of 290. That's the dragon's peak and the low of the day, and it's also the previous RL10 peak. So that's acting as a statistical measure of support. So that 290 now starts feeling like a pretty important price level. And we see that the RL10, which has been on this little sine wave move, is now getting ready to push through that very same level tomorrow. So if we get any kind of performance that is sustained, then the RL10 price will have cleared the previous RL10 peak. And that's really the first time that we can say that we have evidence of a new measure of strength pushing forward. I mean, it's nice to have a couple days here above the dragon, but really that blue line's got to get through the previous maximum peak in order to say statistically that we've closed the door on this little pocket. So now what I want you to notice is that as we roll up this RL10 to a peak and it pulls back and holds support in the dragon and then rolls up, this price region in here between the belly of the RL10 and this peak of the RL10, that's what we would consider to be the pocket. So a pocket entry in price would have been in here. We've had a couple days where it broke through like an emerging dragon, and that's good. But now when the RL10 takes out the previous hump of the RL10, we can now have an additional measure of confidence that say statistically we've just achieved a new like a 10-day high, if you will, in the RL10. So that is something I'll be looking forward to with interest tomorrow. On the downside, then, we have this, like I said, the confluence around 290. We have the spine of the dragon at about 288. The belly of the dragon now is going to be that southern skin. I consider that's going to be very strong. And then tomorrow, this PSAR is in place. But if we went forward one day, we were going to realize that today's dragon bottom is tomorrow's PSAR dot. So that 286 is the next really strong support, and then today's PSAR at 284.5 is very strong. And then it's really nothing until we get down to the 10-day low around 279. Then we have the Bollinger Band mean at 277. And so that's really how much goodwill we've built over the last 10 days. There's several layers of protection before we get the reversion to the mean move. However, if that 10-day low breaks 279, then it's look out below and all parts south. We remain in 4 seasons of MACD. We remain in the fall. Although, if we look closely at that, we'll see that it wouldn't take much more for that to come out of the fall and then back into the summer. Then what we would have is a summer, fall, summer. So what I'll tell you is that I think, absent negative news, and if techs continue to show their leadership, there were some things that sold off today that now have could be thought of as former leaders on sale, and so the seeds of another leg up here are in place to make a serious run at 299. So that'd be a $10 move on 290. So that's about a 3% move. That's about a 1.5 ATRs from here to there. So it could reach that in one day. I mean, you can look at some just last week there were bars that were that big. So yeah, it could certainly get to 299, and that would blow the doors off this previous 10-day high, and then we're all the way back to long-term fair value. And we would have, at that point, in my view, completed the positive third leg since the big sell-off. And then on a longer-term time frame, as we looked at over the weekend, that entry into 300 would now start to be seen on weekly and monthly charts as a significant vote of confidence north. We have this anomaly where the health of the stock market price is not the health of the economy. It's more a reflection on the confidence that the ownership class, the elites, that their interests are being protected by the bailout and the Fed pump. There's in my view, a significant psychological and economic shift happening right now where there is a wedge between the health of the economy and the health of the stock market. For the longest while, that used to be synonymous, but I think there's some narrative being developed that is no longer that's no longer the case. There's a growing awareness that this recovery in the stock market has nothing to do with the health of the economy and the ability of the people to generate their own honest um, income on the basis of their labor, their valued labor. That is becoming replaced in the minds of the people, and there is a fundamental shift in orientation about the relationship of the people to the government, to the nation, to the economy, to the value of labor, and to capital. And this is what a sea change looks like when you're in the middle of the turbulence day to day. But you start taking a look longer term, there are some significant emotional marks being made deep in the psychology of several generations, to the same extent that the Great Depression made marks that were indelible in the psyche and the souls of generations. I mean, I'm a child of Depression babies, and I still struggle with the clean my plate award and not throwing food away and eating when I'm not hungry, just because of those things that are drilled in when we are emotionally pliable. So there are marks being made on generations right now that act on the values level and the identity level of people and their relationships to money that are going to have long-term consequences. And that's what this feels like right now to me. So that's the market health check. Tactically, promising. Operationally, testing. Now that we've gotten all the way to within eyeshot of Emerald City up here, I almost feel like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz when they come out of the forest and running through the field of poppies, hoping to get to Emerald City. And it took a little snowfall to help offset the magic of the Wicked Witch of the West. But there's Emerald City right there. So tactically, we've made the move. Now it's a question, is there operational strength to get it through that magic 300 number and above long-term fair value and a complete recovery? Some things like Microsoft have already done that. And there's other things, though, that are coming back to their previous valuations that now is this the recovery and people want to protect what they had lost but now regained? Is there going to be a shift in that willingness to keep rolling the dice, or are people going to start looking to take some money off the table now that they have recovered some of this? I know that's on the mind of many of the guys in their late 50s and 60s that I teach with, and that's part of the ownership class. That's an important element of psychology that we'll be looking to see how that unfolds in the daily trade. That's my take on it. What worked today? Well, let's see. The S&P was basically flat, and the cluster of the other U.S. indices. Let's take a look at them. So the U.S. S&P is at 0.02, so basically flat. The Dow was down minus 0.4. The Russell down minus 0.5. Treasuries down minus 0.8. EFA down a fraction. So mostly it was markets flat or failing in a quiet way. And the things that worked were key leaders: Facebook, Walmart, Tech, Cisco, Home Depot. Japan paid off in our swing trade. We're going to go look at that one. And then the other cluster of key leaders: Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, healthcare. And then Gilead Sciences had an exceptional day today because of some positive news. So it was the tech giants leading the way and pulling the S&P along, with the first little hint from healthcare, but not much else. Look at all the things that we can itemize that were worse than the market: McDonald's, emerging markets, clean energy, Twitter, Aussie dollar, Tesla, Mexico, lumber, oil, real estate, basic materials, Wheaton, energy. So there are a lot more things suffering than gaining today. And then as we go further down the stack, the things that really suffered: Devon Energy, finance, oil exploration, Cliff, Cat, Brazil, Boeing, Alcoa, Nucor. So all of that XLB was down not only as a sector, but the individual companies we favor all gave back even more. The worst one in that stack being U.S. Steel at minus 4%. It came back to 820, which, 3 weeks ago would have been an extraordinarily favorable price. So it proved to be vulnerable to profit preservation. So I think there's a lot of things in these industrial companies where they've kind of powered their way back up to something like fair value, and people are kind of breathing a sigh of relief and taking some gains and making some bank. And as a sector, XLB, which had been in a leadership role, gave back today. And the recovery in energy, which has done pretty well to survive the oil getting smashed, also gave back today. So things like Devon and Chevron starting to give up. So the very narrow leadership of those giant tech leaders is what gave the S&P the ability to withstand some of that selling. And the question will be, did that mask a much broader weakness? If you look at the advanced decline lines, it sort of reinforces that. So that's what was kind of working today. The one true fact that really helps in the longer run, though, is that, VXX, the lack of volatility, minus 6.67. So that's kind of a vote in the ongoing strength of the indexes. But I think over the last 10 days or so, we've seen some individual companies moving to the top and differentiating from the market. But now those leaders have sort of pulled back, and now it has reverted back towards market leadership. So I'm adopting the mentality right now that it's the broad market health, the broad market strength, the bet on that operational time frame that's starting to matter. So we're going to keep a close watch on some key indicators about market health. Do the small cap indexes, do those traders, or do they aggressively lead the way? And so what's the relationship between IWM, small caps, speculatives, and the large caps? How does that relationship in the U.S. market shake out? What happens with volatility and what happens with Treasury? So as we watch that little cluster, that's going to be the early tell on the health of the market tomorrow as we start coming into that station near 300. So that's how I'm going to look at that. I'm really going to concentrate on getting the market correct. What I do like about all of this is that Japan differentiated itself on a market basis from the S&P. So the S&P was flat, but Japan was up in a strong way. And the other markets were down compared to the S&P. So it's really, in terms of large markets and parking some money safely, for example, it's Japan, not treasuries, not EFA, not small caps, not the emerging markets. It's Japan. So there we are. I want to shift gears and talk you through this practical exercise. I'm going to connect this to the whole idea of narrative sense making. Is Van in here? Yeah. So Van Miller and I attended my mentor David Boji's opening round of a global narrative inquiry storytelling leadership and ethics in the world workshop. He and his research partner, they've been in the business for 40 years, and they are publishing a new book later in September, and this is rolling out the implementation, the how-to use narrative as a way to make progress in a difficult world in which new stories are emerging faster than ever, and it's those new stories that are going to anchor us into longer-term beliefs that guide us through this change in what is becoming the new normal. That was one of the themes that really emerged out of that working group today, which was populated, I would guess, 50-50 by the Euros and centered around Denmark, and then a sprinkling of U.S. And a few other globals around. But it was the idea that narrative and storying is a teachable skill, and that we can use principles of story to help us rapidly and reliably and artfully make sense of the world around us in an honorable, respectful way, in a way that encourages everybody in the circle to contribute to this tapestry of stories that are helping us understand the world. I gave a little sense of that when I was talking about that transition in the minds of some of the people, as their values and identity about money and the relationship of themselves to the market and labor and capital are being recast in these troublesome times. You know, the world's on fire, and like samurai swords, we're being heated and folded and beaten into new shapes and developing resiliencies as a consequence of that. But not all metal gets turned into quality samurai swords. There's something in the craftsman's skill that enables that to happen. And so it's not just heat the metal and beat it. There's a bunch of art in all that, what looks like just brute force. There's a deep and subtle skill in there. So this whole idea of storying and narrative has elements of craft skill. And so that's what we're exploring, Van and I, with a pretty interesting first round. And I'm going to share some insights. Well, the project that I brought to the table there was exactly what we're doing in here, and that is how to develop stories as we go, to learn by doing and telling stories about it, and then using those stories to strengthen our practice, and then using our practice to strengthen our story. So there is a mutually reinforcing relationship here between what's happening at the tactical level on the daily trades and the individual trades, and the longer term development of skill connected to who we are. Part of that story then is this little exercise I invited you guys to try if you were on the call last night and if you read through the posting. And so I invited some folks to draw your energy map, because when I was talking with Joe, one of the things that it seemed to me was central to his challenge was to have a continuous source of energy he could draw upon to do what must be done, to re-enter the zero state, which is an act of will and requires energy, instead of going right into the trade, to raise the energy to properly put the morning session to bed, to take the 4 hour that he was getting in the morning and properly care for that and put it in the vault, an act of will, and to then re-enter the zero state, an act of will, and then go into the tunnel that leads you to the battle circle in the proper zero state frame of mind. That's an intention. That's an act of will. And you've got to have the energy in your bank account to do that. When you sense that you are running low on energy, it's like in your cell phone, you got to hurry up and get a few more things in while I still got better. And there's an urgency and an anxiety, and it takes you off your center because you're worried about that externality. And that's based on a feeling of a limited source of energy or scarcity mindset. So what we got to do is, in this exercise, draw our energy map. And on the left-hand side, I suggested you could put your beliefs about the act of trading, your process of trading. If you were to represent that as an energy drain, if that's how it feels, well, what does that flow look like? It's driven by a mantra or a belief that says, hey, trading drains me. That it's an act of will to do those things. And I have to pay a price to go through all those things. And so I have to monitor my bank account closely, my emotional bank account closely, in order to have the energy to do what must be done. Well, there's a whole set of supporting beliefs that are in that space, um, that would then be the foundational beliefs upon which this energy drain, the process of trading as an energy drain, might look like. So, what might that look like? The next challenge was, well, if I just reframe this, if I made a decision, remember, it's a choice to decide what your process is going to look like and how you're going to respond to it, the sense that you're going to make of it. You can reframe yourself and your beliefs and your processes, and therefore the environment around you, by the choices that you make. That's an act of will to make sense of the world around you, to choose your metaphor. So choose those wisely. And that's a decision. So if we were to draw trading as a process that results in being invigorated, then we could see trading as an energy pump, that the act of trading actually contributes to my energy state, my emotional bank account. And if I want to make bank daily in terms of money and portfolio equity, I can also think of my emotional bank account as a make bank daily. Use those acts of will to increase my emotional resilience and capabilities. So I can look at this as a positive feedback loop, that the way I structure the trading and the beliefs, therefore, that I bring to it are things that will lead to an increase in my daily bank. So this is really about time, will, pattern, and money, the four things that I need in order to be able to trade. This is about the all-important will element of this. How can I craft a pattern in the way I design my energy flows so that it is reinforcing and contributing, so that the act of trading professionally generates the feelings that I can draw upon to increase my emotional bank account. In the call last night, I talked through the idea of what is the wedge that you can put between the old way and the new way in order to transition over this boundary from energy drain to energy pump. So in this area, I invite you to say, if these are the old beliefs that support the energy drain, and then these are the beliefs that if I adopt allow me to design and then implement an energy pump, well, that's nice, but how do I get from point A to point B? How do I enlist those powerful forces for good that are going to simultaneously push me towards this better, higher state? And what kinds of powerful forces can I use to pull me through to the new, higher emotional state? And then what does that transition frame look like? What is the process that looks like of this combination of pushing and pulling that generates the movement from one side to the other? How do I get over that hurdle? And then once I'm over that hurdle, how does that wall, that 1 hour stop, how does that keep me from retrograding and falling back? How do I lock in those gains once I've made them? So this little mental model combines the elements of design thinking of current state, future state, but also an operational approach with enough detail that you can visualize on one slide how these powerful forces for good are just going to pull and push you into that new position. You can't even help it. You're just going to get going, and that momentum is going to get you in here, and then you're going to use good architecture and safety and structure to lock in those gains in the way that you create new habits. That's where bullet journaling and atomic habits and checklists and making things your own to lower the transaction costs of doing the right thing. That's how you lock those things in, and it enables you to make bank daily. Because what you're going to do is every day add to your checklist that, did I follow through on my energy pump today to build my emotional bank account in the way that I planned, prepared, executed, and assessed? that the positive reinforcement of doing the right thing professionally adds to your emotional bank account and makes each day easier to do it than to not do it. It's just easier to do the right thing. And then that has a positive feedback. There's not a cost in doing it. The cost comes from doing the wrong thing and then knowing at your root level that I'm going to have to repay that with interest someday. So it's actually just easier to do the right thing once we're committed to it. So this little process model, this map, doesn't have to just be about energy maps. It's all of your process maps. This is the actionable mental model. This is in your toolkit now. You can apply that to anything where you want to go from point A to point B, from current state to future state. And you can adapt this. Yeah, catching the wave, Van, exactly. And then locking it in, not giving it back. How do I lock in that exit? So the entry, if you think about this just the same way that we approach trading, you'll realize that the entry, it doesn't even matter as much as it does the management and get to no lose plus dinner for two, lock in that first gain, and then manage it to the next gain, and then bring in the expert when it's really paying off to exploit it, get that second position in, lock it in and focused, and scale when you find things that work. So if you got some, hey, this might work, that's what you do in the transition frame. Don't try to overthink that and make that perfect. Just make an entry into the transition and go. Get to no lose plus dinner for two. Scale, pile on, leverage, add to it. Turbo and core. Find those core things that are working for you. Add turbo where it makes sense. And in that way, you're developing the skill set that will help you make these paradigm shifts in a very powerful way. And all we're doing is using the same mental models of managing individual trades to trade up in our own psychology and behavior. It's the same thing. So just get started and go. You already know enough to get going. You have the skill, the will, the imagination, and the resources. So just do it. Just lock it in. Make bank daily. Let's go. Saddle up. Come on. Well, that's worth its weight in gold right there, by the way, I think. So here's my sample. I almost was reluctant to show this to you, but why not? If some of parts of this this is just a template from my head in my life. And to the extent that it works, adapt, improvise, overcome, move out. Here's my playbook. This is me doing my own work. So I finished this morning at about 4:30 because I couldn't stop until I was done. There you are. So I'm going to draw my own energy map now. What I'll do in the for the LMS is I'll break these two pieces up into two separate lessons so people have time to actually do it. But let's get on with it. So we're going to make bank daily. Trading invigorates me because it's an energy pump, and that's a decision that I have made. So I can go to the left, red dot. I can go to the right, green dot. Green dot. That's what I want. So I'm on this side of the wall already in an affirmative step. So if I looked at this as an energy drink, this is so old school that it just, hate it. See how much of this resonates with you. This is how easy it is to name it and then just erase it. If you did this on a little 9x12 dry erase board and labeled all these things and just felt every one of those and all the bad emotions, and then just when you're done feeling all that and naming it, then just take a cloth and wipe it off. It's just that easy so that you can concentrate on these things. So if I thought trading was an energy drain, I might look at it as an unfair tug of war. And so I'm pulling this weight of R up a hill, and I'm on this end of it with my little energy, and I feel like I'm on fire because of the time and stress which are working against me and undercutting me. And I feel the heat. And the fear is sapping my strength and giving it to the bad guys that are on, fat guys on the other side of this thing downhill, and they're using gravity, everybody and everything else, and all the odds that are against me, and all the reasons why trading is hard, and tigers eating me, and sharks biting me, and gravity just pulling down, and inertia, all of that stuff makes it hard to pull a weight up the hill. Well, that's not even fair. Yeah, right. That's how you could imagine how all of these things act to drain your will to do what must be done. If that was your trade frame, your process frame, you could understand, well, yeah, if I believed all of these things below, yeah, that trading is an external activity, that it's not who I am from the inside, but it's an external thing that I've chosen to pick up, that's a cost, because I have to put that on. I have to pick it up and put it on. That's a cost. I got to adjust it all and make it fit, and And if I'm the one who has to trigger the activity to make all this stuff happen, that's a cost. To just get started, to overcome the inertia, like a great big train trying to get moving. That's hard. And if I framed it so that this affirmative action has a cost, this positive activity takes energy. And if tension and uncertainty sap my energy, and if it's like climbing stairs or walking up a hill, that takes energy. And if I have to actively control myself to defeat the monkey and to stay focused and use power to keep myself perfect so that I can trade only in a perfect way, and anything less than that doesn't work, and then I'm a bad person, and that reinforcing feedback loop, all of that stuff, all of those beliefs are energy sinks. They are energy drains. But if you adopted those beliefs, it would manifest in these external names of things that are sapping energy from you. All right, well, the hell with that. I want an energy pump. I want trading to invigorate. And this is how I feel about trading. Trading does invigorate me. By the end of the day, I can't wait to get going and to do the after action report and the daily reports and see what's happening for tomorrow and to make sense of it so I can share that with you, how I do it and what I see, knowing that you're going to give me feedback about that. And that's iron sharpening iron. And I'm going to get better as a consequence of doing this briefing and telling these stories. So this circular wave is a natural flow. Let's look at the beliefs. It's a natural flow that's at work here. Things happen naturally. Rivers flow. Water has power. All I got to do is float and steer just enough. And I'm fat, so I float. Just relax. Breathe and you'll float. You do. People do. You're lighter than water. No matter how dense you feel at times, you're lighter than water. And so now my job is just sense and respond. I don't have to own all this stuff. I don't have to generate the action. I just got to sense and respond, float and steer, and get carried along with nudges, and I can free myself. I don't have to control myself. I can free myself. Instead of climbing stairs, I'm being carried along by the river. The tension and uncertainty is replaced by sensing and responding. Action doesn't have a cost. The action is being performed and I'm just in it. I don't trigger the action. The river is just flowing. I'm not generating external activity for anything to occur. It's a natural flow where things happen in the river. I'm being carried along. That's why that river metaphor is so powerful. Well, how do I get from point A to point B? What are some of those transitional beliefs to get out of this? What can I do to push myself from here into the transition state, the null state there in between 1 and 2? And what are the things the beliefs that are pulling me forward? Well, first, just relax and breathe, because that's what it's like over in here. So if you can learn to relax and breathe when you're trading, you've already made the most important first step. That's your entry. That's the low risk entry. Relax and breathe, for crying out loud. Cry out loud. That is how you relax. That's why babies cry. When they process that energy, that's how they process it and communicate it. When they're done, now they can go to sleep. That's how they relax, by issuing all that pain and suffering to others. So just look at the babies crying as their natural relaxing and breathing process. So when the kids cry, it didn't bother me. That was just the sound of life being expressed. You have to teach yourself to be able to do that, but after a while, you might as well, because they're going to keep crying anyway. In fact, if you try and shush them, you haven't let them fully process all that, so let it go. That's what that owl meditation will allow you to do with all of the things that are on this left-hand side. Name them, feel them, write them down, offer that to the universe, set it on fire, watch the smoke, and when it disappears, all that's left is you in the zero state. Lather, rinse, repeat. A recognition that we are simply a part of an ecosystem that has all the rules, that takes care of it, and that has water flowing. It's not me doing an external activity or me triggering the action or being responsible for everything. It's being just who I am, a part of an ecosystem, and that has natural forces. So know, name, explain, appreciate, leverage those natural forces and the structures you find. Know the river, respect the flow. Just do your part, and enough is enough. These are powerful forces that are pushing and pulling you into the path of least resistance. That is the path of least resistance. Just get on that conveyor. It'll pull you into there. And these beliefs are just going to push you out of that and into this. You can't help but just go once you make the entry, which is relax and breathe. That's all. And then just flow into that state. Well, how does this now map? Instead of an unfair tug of war, hey, it rains, and it's just another day at work, and all I'm going to do is do my job and get paid in this entire cycle. I'm just going to do my job and just get paid. That's all part of the natural order of things. It's just another day at work. I'm going to make haste slowly. The sun is on my face, the wind is in my hair, and a song is in my heart. And I'm just going to be water, my friend, Bruce Lee. Thank you. There's an infinite number of trades. This trade is just one of the next 1,000, which is just the first 1,000 of the next million. There's an infinite number of opportunities. There's more than you can even see and count and leverage anyway. So each one doesn't matter. Just be in it and be of it, and then get beyond it. And we're all just bodies in motion. So there's no hurry, no worry. We're just going to do our job, and the cycle will repeat. Central to this is the idea of the zero state, and pace yourself for the long haul. And so here's that zero line, a MACD histogram, or the slope of the RL30. And winter, spring, summer, fall, or that's the risk Z. There's a yin-yang sine wave things going on. And the marker, that stability line, that little balance beam, is the zero line in the MACD and the zero line in risk Z and the slope of the RL30. And that's already all you need. You know what your strategies are in the winter. You know what you should be targeting in the winter, and preparing yourself for the spring planting, and living off the efforts of the spring and the summer and the fall harvest. And you know how to distinguish between the transition states between winter and spring, spring and summer, summer and fall, fall and winter. And sometimes you get a summer, fall, summer. And sometimes you get winter, spring, winter. And those signals are significant. So no matter what, you already know enough on that chart to do what must be done. And you can choose trading to be an energy pump by adopting these beliefs, by leaving behind these beliefs for others, and then using these transitional steps to push and pull yourself into that higher state with these powerful forces that are already there. And all you got to do is just do them and just go. That's the energy pump. That is an example of using reframing in a structured way of how to do it. And Van Miller, you're going to hear me tell that story in our little story time with Dr. Boji and the team, because this is, in my view, the how-to. So quickly, Boji says, these are the characteristics of the new normal. All of the contributors to problems on the left and the current status of problems with people in organizations and in their own ecosystems and why they're having problems. I leave that for you to look at. Boji's model looks like something you just saw. Theory and practice, past, present, and future. Objective, measurable truth described by our pattern language and the ideas of it starts with what's true and observable and that we can name, and then the processes of stories, making room for the new stories, like driving the wedge between the current state and the future state so those transitional beliefs can get us through. Developing the narrative and the plot that tells us how to adopt those new beliefs and strategies to move forward. Timing of it so that we respect the past but flow through the present and into the future, and we have some sense of the flow of time in a realistic, artful way, and that we use support and help from each other and to each other and from the environment, from our sources of power, so that we can stage and frame and then reflect on how we're doing as we go. And so we can connect both the conceptual and the grounded. So my contribution today was, you'll see this, those of you who are in the, have already gone through this lesson in the boot camp, but this idea of the 5 locations of knowing: head, heart, gut, hands, and feet. That your head is the abstract, where you know things at the conceptual level, but the heart are the values that you feel and the purpose towards which you're walking, and that you have to enlist the knowledge of the head and align it with the knowledge of the heart so that you know that you're on your right mission, connected to a deep sense of identity and values to give you the strength to do what must be done. And then the gut is that instinctive knowledge of knowing without being able to say why, but the real deep knowing, driven by both fear and greed and uncertainty and all that stuff. That has to be aligned with what you hope and aspire and are committed to and what you plan to do with your head. But the gut is the one that's got to be convinced, because that's where the fear and the greed is, at our very center of our core. You got to address that. You got to advance into that area and be centered with your deep breath in your dantian in the Tai Chi. Well, that's not enough. You got to know what to do. You got to have the skill to know how to do it. You need the knowledge of your hands, the craftsman's hands, to turn all this stuff into art and practice and tools and product improvements continuously in the workshop. And That's with your conscious competence until you've internalized it and you trust your hands. And then the knowledge of your feet, which is to know how to go. Once you take that first step and you make your first trade, all you've done is the first trade. The second one's harder because you now know something about it, and the second one feels a little harder to do it right. And then as long as you maintain that continuous improvement in the Kanban, in your Gemba, continuous improvement, each day in every way just a little bit better, and you start picking them up and laying them down one step at a time, how to go, rain or shine, day or night, winter, spring, summer, fall, getting it done, knowing how to go, to endure, to commit, to adapt and improvise and maintain the entire physical and emotional and mental structure. How to go, the endurance is its general support. So while your hands are making things, your feet are moving you along that pathway from where to where I am to where I'm going. That's that journeying that was in that story time, that futuring. So if you think about this in the overlay from David Bogey's work, head, feet, past, future, this continuously bubbling stew of the craftsman's knowledge that you're refining in the way that you trade. You're not just trading the trade, but you're improving the trader in your plan, prepare, execute, and assess. Well, if you have been through boot camp, you've heard a form of that. I just gave it to you better, I think, than I did even in that boot camp lesson, which was pretty good. The new insight for me today was this whole idea about story sharing and the idea of this journey into a roundabout, which is an improvement over a four-way intersection with traffic lights where you get stop and go and traffic jams and all that. A roundabout allows us to process that in a more organic and orderly way. And so you got people coming from every direction, all of us, from wherever we started from, and yet we find ourselves here. And if we structure that as a continuous process of a roundabout, well, we're generating mutual understanding and multi-dimensional perspectives and using each other's knowledge and shared experiences to improve our insights. They're looking at us, we're looking at them, we're telling each other what we see and feel and hope and dream and advise and consider. And then in that small group, we're getting better. But at some point, we've got to support directional movement. You got to get out of that roundabout and go forward on your journey, on your path, and then come back to the campfire and tell those stories. So we have this roundabout is the base camp and campfire, that learning environment where we are recharged in the same way that the trading process is an energy pump. This is an energy pump, that the invigoration of base camp and campfire and the shared experiences. Otherwise, trading is a lonely environment if you're out there at a Lone Ranger by yourself fighting wolves and tigers and hyenas and rat bastards. That's a lot of work. So the tribe, the team, your accountability partners, base camp and campfire is a way to update those stories and retell them and show them what's going on. And that's what supports the directional movement. And your heart picks the path. And through the combination of skills and will and endurance and head and mutual support, we deal with that knowledge of the gut and the worry and the fear and just say, well, suck it up. Let's go. Let's go. We can do this. And now that roundabout acts like an energy pump in the psychological elements. So that's what I want to say about that. Empty your bowl and reflect on that. Look up the owl meditation sometime. Consider these things. Draw a sketch and see how it feels with you. All right, here we go. Empty your bowl. Look at that. 1 hour on the button. Not bad. Well done. That sense of timing was impeccable. Hey, Ken, I thought this was about trading and strategy. Yeah, it is. Okay, here we go. Right. Next, I want you to just get a sense of DIA right now in our little yellow box. And I just drew that by eyesight. Look at it. God dang if that ain't the right size. Yeah, so this vertical line right here was yesterday's close and today's open. So that's where it closed. Here's where it opened. You see that yesterday's VWAP, Friday's VWAP, right in the middle, it gapped down to here. But look at the size of the noise box on those Z3 pinches here, and throughout all of this churn. It gapped down but failed to fail further. So it just gapped to a new level. They tried to induce fear a couple times. They bought it right back. So this ain't going down. And if it refuses to lose, what's else? Oh, well, a Z3 pinch breakout now that we're through the morning session where they tried to make it fail and couldn't. Notice how this thing clusters in the Z river and then breaks out and then gets to a Z3 pinch. And then a breakout of two of those bars, two of those blocks, like butter. And then a high and a low, and it settles in. Notice this pattern repeats itself once we get past the shenanigans. This is what your emerging dragons and then finding the timing on your RLXDs and that Z3 pinch breakout looks like. So you had a 1, a 2, a higher high. It found support down here and then broke out to the upside, right? And then here, 4, 5. I should actually put this a little lower, sorry. So if we had this little hesitation here, 4, 5, 6 in the belly of the river, belly of the dragon in this RL10. So now I can look at this as, if you feel the way those patterns shape and you know the size of the noise box, that's that yellow box, you can start feeling for entries in these little bends of the river where it failed to fail further. And these little RLXD entries. And now you don't have to wait for confirmation of the move before you get in. That's what the cost of certainty is. So if I drew this line across here, now I can enter at that green dot in the RLXD, the third criteria now, instead of waiting for the breakout. I can enter in that first green dot instead of waiting for the emerging dragon, in the same way that I can enter maybe buying it on the button. Think about that last week's lesson on that one. Now I can buy it in one of those two green dots. And look how good that noise box is at protecting me down here. And that Z3 line acts as the as an implied statistical support level. And that's at a level in which it protects me against the reversion all the way back to the VWAP and the RL270. So I'm taking a venture inside this tight little range, and I'm buying it on the button. And then if it crosses that thick blue line, trying to get that horizontal, sorry. Now I can buy in that channel on the button as long as you know that that's what you're doing. In the same way that this entry up here, if I'm just using the southern skin of the dragon, it's protecting me against a return to the RL270, which is now in the middle of this support level, and it's protecting me against a move to the VWAP. So that entry right after 6 is you're making a fraction of an execution R inside there, with the idea being that, hey, if it gets through the emerging dragon at 5, now I'm going to get all of this I'm going to get 1, 2 of those boxes instead of waiting for the entry here. And then I don't know what my fill's going to be because it's already running. It's already clear to everybody that this thing is going. It's cleared that entire support region. You will see this pattern so many times that this is the idea behind pinch and stretch. Expansion and contraction. Inhale, pause, exhale. And this surge of the next move. And the Dow is the most orderly of them all because it has 30 big, fat, large multinational corporations, 30 real things that are have to get pushed around. And that's where everybody's retirement is. And all the sovereign wealth funds of the world are geared towards that. So that's that'll be the last index that falls if civilization ends, So that's why I like the Dow. It has certain interesting qualities there. That's a really important lesson, that you got to step back away from those 1-minute bars. I mean, there's probably, I don't know, it's 2 days worth of minutes, 10 hours. That's 600 little bars on there. And so now you start feeling the breathing of that animal. And now the power of the dragon to give you some insights as a summary of price. You can start zooming down inside these charts. And now suddenly, look how strong that support of the dragon and the PSAR really are. It keeps you in all of those great big unambiguous moves, and it gives you the confidence to say, hey, if this thing's going to work, when it crosses that blue line, it's going to go. And the longer that it doesn't go, that's failure to follow through. So when you're timing those little entries, remember the RLXD is not the reason to get in. That's just the timing. The reason to get in was that you saw this 1, 2, 3, pause, bing, go. That's what you saw. And you saw 4, 5, 6 orderly pullback. It was 1/4 of a pullback. It pulled back one of those noise boxes and go. Bam. That's a multiple of the frog. That's a multiple of that's essentially the minimum manageable risk box is the width of the noise box when the thing has completely exhaled and the dragon is at rest. When you look at those little sideways quiet channel pinches, look at what the dragon is doing. Like this one here just north of 6, he's sideways and in the middle of the river. When you look at the ones from the day before, he's sideways and in the river. So the dragon and his behavior, that's just a metaphor, but it is a powerful way to tell stories about what we're seeing. A story is a complex collection of concepts and tropes and actors and themes that are coherent and have a logic to other humans. Guess who is in the marketplace in this competition? Other humans. So telling stories about these things are ways that we can formulate hypotheses that allow us to frame trades, that allow us to experiment, and allow us to collect data. To the extent that our stories are aligned with the way the herd animals behave, like tell the story of the bisons and the cows and the fish and the salmon, then we're really telling stories about how we believe those herd animals are behaving. And we respect them because how hard it is to get through this dangerous world. And so even when we're hunters, we are respecting the bison and using the whole animal with respect for the gift of life that they've given us, that we may celebrate it as part of the ecosystem. That's our role in the ecosystem, is to tell that story with honor and respect and love for the herd animals that sustain us, knowing that eventually we go back to the ground and help grow the grass that they feed on in the cycle of life and all that stuff, right? Yeah, Ken, I want to talk about trading. Okay, so here we are. Gilead Sciences had some good news today. This is how it closed yesterday. So if you were to just draw a yellow box and say, how big is the minimum manageable risk box in that thing, I wouldn't be offended if you chose that much. You know, the super pinch on that Z3, that's a super pinch, or the wider pinch all the way out here, that's fine. What I want you to notice real quick, I'm hoping tomorrow that my digital pen and tablet come in so I can start drawing with a pen instead of this mouse. I want you to notice this pattern here. Fake one, and in your mind you should be waiting for me to say go two. Fake one and go two. And then notice the PSAR flip inside there. That's why I can't wait to get that digital pen. This mouse is a little too nervous. Too nervous in the service. So a couple candidates for the width of the minimum manageable risk box. And now as it came into the close and settled down and clustered tightly around the VWAP, everybody was waiting for the news announcements today. So that's sort of the support level that everybody was agreeing would be fair value overnight. So that's where it closed. And now the next day it opens, big gap up. Positive reaction to news. Ah. So just maybe that much. How about that? How about that calibrated eyeball? Uh, I wouldn't be offended if you decided to get north if it breaks through that. We might wait for the OR5, that 5-minute opening range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at that calibration. Awesome. Look at that Z3 expansion. It gapped up, made a level up. It's one full box north. Now notice the PSAR. It's kind of like right inside that. That's the fair value as measured by the PSAR from the open. It moved up one quantum box, if we will, if you want to say it that way. Gilead gapped up and was growing while the entire rest of the market had gapped down and was struggling to get out of the hole. Find the mover. You better be where? What is the only thing I got to do after I enter? Move my stop to no lose plus dinner for 2. I'm not losing money on that trade. Just saying. Something like that. Step ladder, support levels, climbing a mountain, climbing the ladder. being swept along by the river. Hey, what if we were in a helicopter looking down? What if we were an owl or an eagle and just looking down on this thing and following the flow of the stream and the river? That thin blue line, that's where water's going right now. And that other river is coming. It's a tributary. And that little stream is going to come back to the primary river at some point. I've never actually said it that way before. That's an example of sometimes the story tells you. By this time, I didn't know why I had made the color blue. Now I know why. Would you be offended if I got in right there and then just move this to here? Now, if I hit that red line and get out of it and I'm all out, I didn't lose money. Whoa! And out. Somewhere in here, I'm not offended if you're out here and made bank, or got out here and made bank. And if you did, that's fine. Let's just say that one was hit. That's awesome. Now what are you noticing on the blue line? What does it feel? What are you feeling? Where is the pocket? Right there. The really aggressive entry is this RLXD if it crosses the hump of the dragon. The second, what I would call the, sort of the emerging dragon, as if it took out the hump of that dragon. But it didn't fail very much, and so the top of the dragon is flat. There's not even much pocket in there between the dragon and the hump of the dragon. And you can see the pocket here now. And then this is your support level at the PSAR. Hey, the PSAR got hit, but the RL10 didn't breach it. But we're protecting. The reason we exit that thing is because we're protecting against a move to the VWAP, the Bollinger Band mean, fair value, and closing of the gap. So we're giving up. We gave up this much to protect against that much. That's 2-to-1 profit preservation. You pick your entry. Here, somewhere in this region, or here. And then that red line protects you until you get to the point where you can then jump it to no lose plus dinner for two. So that's Gilead. That's happening while the market gapped down 1% and then is slowly climbing its way out of the hole. So there is some buying going on in the indexes, but Gilead already started ahead of the curve and it's running away from the herd. So that's that. That's the Gilead move after this, after that re-entry, and it runs all the way up into here. We're only an hour into the day. What are you feeling now? Sideways quiet channel? You'd be correct. Notice the reduced oscillations of the blue line and the sideways of the dragon. That's characteristic of the sideways quiet channel. And the VWAP has kind of caught up and stabilized here. And the RL270 is just pointing north. It's coming into the station here and said, now, is there another leg up? If this is the first leg, say that's the first leg, and this is the second leg, and now this is the third leg, it's either going to work or it's going to fail back to here, and then we're going to test to see if it comes all the way back there. So something's getting ready to happen. You can feel it, and you can feel the Bollinger Band starting to open. It votes up and back. Pause, reflect. Now we're on the other side of the RL270. We're through the, we're entering lunch. Tighter, 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 break out and up. That feels almost like it, right? It made the move, it got reset, and now it just kind of grinds. So you're not going to lose any money in there, especially if you're getting these sideways quiet channel breakouts. You might get a piece, but you won't lose money. You might get a piece either here or here, but you won't lose money. That'll probably pay you. You might play the fake one, go two. You might get, these are fractions, but you're not going to lose money. And now we've rolled into the last hour. So the early decisive move and the preparation for leaving the starting gate with the structured approach. That's Gilead today. Turned out to be the best mover. Here's healthcare. Here's how it closed. Here's how it opened. Notice that that's the same first leg, second leg. Gilead benefited from the strength in healthcare, and healthcare received a fractional gain from Gilead too. Now I want you to notice, here's a low in the RL10, which corresponded with this previous support level. A low, a higher low, a second higher low. Want you to notice the pocket inside here, snug into the bend of the dragon and the RLXD, not waiting for the emerging dragon, just be a dragon rider right there. And then here, there's another one. You can just feel that, just buy it. I also want you to notice before we go on further that whereas Gilead took off right from the get-go, this one gapped all the way down and sold off to here, well outside the Z3, before making that rocket ship run. So if you bought that one, you didn't have to wait for the breakout. You could buy the RLXD here with the RL10 as your support. And the rest of the day, it doesn't follow through. Sideways quiet channel, trying to grind north. Oh yeah, it's just sideways quiet channel, right? So sometimes you try it, doesn't work maybe. Try it again, it doesn't work. Try it again, it doesn't work. Try it again. Oh, bam, it works. Two big legs up. Strong close as the rest of the market followed through today. So you've got to adopt the mentality that each trade is just the next trade of the next, it's the first trade of the next 1,000. And you've got enough rations and supplies to endure that long cross-country walk. If you got to walk, you got to walk. So it's the first of the next 1,000 trades, which is the first 1,000 of the next 1,000,000. And each next trade is respected, but not expected, if I may say it that way. And you have to have the endurance and ready to flip on and go. Get the expert in and then really leverage that. Okay. So that's healthcare. Home Depot, we framed this one over the weekend, talked about that key leader that had pulled back and might be postured for a nice run. It closed strong Friday, gaps down like the rest of the market. There's your morning hook. Big sell off. The RL10 turns. How long are you going to wait? Well, just buy it there. Fine. Tight stop here. Not losing money on that trade. If you believe in it too long, it comes home. That's the tactical play. 1, 2, and collapse. PSAR flip, RLXD, crosses the 90, crosses the Bollinger Band mean, leaves the river, comes all the way back to the VWAP like it's supposed to. Right back to where you started. That's why you take those hits when the price steps on a landmine and triggers the PSAR flip. That's why you do it. Because you never know if is it that going to be the one that runs quickly back, or is that the one where it hits and as soon as you get out it recovers? You exactly don't know and cannot know. Too many things going on. Here's a low. Here's a higher low, held support at the VWAP, crosses the RLXD. There's your pocket. A price up here would be the emerging dragon. Here's the pocket, snug to the bend of the dragon. With a stop right there, never hit. Up. Now we're going to test this price level with money in hand. Instead of waiting to enter, we're locking in. And out. Sideways quiet channel. Super pinch. Going into the lunch. I could buy that on the button right there and just say, you know what, I'll use the southern slope of the southern side of the VWAP and just say, this thing's been above the VWAP mostly all day, except for one little trivial. So just buy it on the button with a stop there at Z3 and just say, the heck with it. Come at me, bro. Go for what you know. So that support level there is still slightly below the VWAP, and that's about 234.50. Now, last thing to look at. Here's 234.50. That's the price level we just looked at. That's the move that was available in the afternoon that comes out of a sideways quiet channel super pinch. Oh, this thing had a lot more room in it. Why not? Market failed to fail. Hey, I tried it here once and it didn't work, so I just left it. Oh, really? Okay. You got to be able to read sign. It moves when it's ready, not when you're ready. It moves when it decides, not when you decide. I want you to notice now that this, in the afternoon move, there's 3 legs. 1, 2, 3. Look at the qualitative difference between those 3 moves. I now want you to notice the absolute gain of it. That's this vertical green line. That's how much it gained in that much blue time, green gain. The second leg up, it lasted longer, feels more orderly. This green line is this green line. The second leg gained as much as the first leg, but the first leg gained it in this amount of blue time, which is this amount of blue time. It took twice as long for the second leg to gain the same amount. Not quite as much buying pressure, because a bunch of guys already got theirs here. So it's not quite as powerful, got as far, but took twice as long. And then the third leg failed to fail, didn't come back to the VWAP, but now this thing never really got going. Look at it, tried a couple times, and you still got rising lows. So there's still buying pressure, but they ran out of time and money. Now I want you to look at the size of the sell-offs. On this little pullback, it fell that far that fast. That's this red line. On the pullback after the second leg, it fell twice as far in the same amount of time. It took twice as long to get the same height, and then when it gave back twice as much as it did on this leg. Can you feel the decrease of buying pressure? You should. Now, the pullback here was, the first pullback was this red line. And then the second pullback was this red line. So it actually pulled back twice as far as it pulled back the first time. And then it never really gained any traction. So when I talk about C1, plan for 2, hope for 3, and the idea of assessing the relative strength trends on the basis of how far those legs are going, that's what I'm looking at, and that's what I'm feeling. So while I'm just marching along here, using my, look at that PSAR, how good. And if that got you out, that should get you in the pocket. So no worries. You're trying to protect against a move all the way back to the VWAP. Remember, this thing goes back to the VWAP. It already did once today in the morning session. On this move, remember, it came back after the legs up. 1, 2, and then nothing. It came all the way back to the VWAP, and that's where this thing is going to settle by the end of the day. So I want you to study those charts as a way to start appreciating geometry and forms and norms and standards and how we use these statistical measures of support and resistance, of the RL10 versus the RL270. Like, I want you to notice, if we were using the regression line fractal framework, here is a moment where the RL10 and the RL270 agreed and agreed. And then here's a moment where the RL10 had the maximum excursion away from the RL270. And on this run, when it came back to the VWAP, those two got very close. And then it stretched higher, but it couldn't make a new high. And now this time, the RL10 actually got below the 270. Over on this side, here's the point of maximum excursion between the 270 and the 10. And here it came back pretty close on that pullback. It came right back to the 270 and then expanded again. And that's how far it could get away at the point of maximum excursion. And it came right back to the 270 again. So you can start using that relationship between the fast RL10 and the slow RL270 to start estimating the magnitude of the next moves. And then you can anchor that, all of that, to the mathematical VWAP, which is volume weighted average price for the day. And then when these guys unwind their leverage positions, it wants to run back to the VWAP, which is where it settles for the day, quite often. So those are the lessons on day by, or the intraday charts and the dailies. I'm not going to go through the speed run because that's about a 15-minute video. The video's already posted on Patreon. It's well done. It lays out the structure of the a lot of the turbo trades that we framed from over the weekend on Sunday. Those fired, and so you can see how we managed those. In some cases, some were long, some were short, some didn't fire at all, and how we adjusted the frames. So that's worthy of your attention if you're interested in the swing trading. But again, all those patterns are fractal. That's a day by day bar at a time. There's an intermediate time frame that I haven't really done much of, but it's the same thing. But like 30-minute charts, 30-minute bars, it's all the same patterns, same interpretation, same spirit of the hunter and the farmer and the trapper, and our spirit animals. Okay, that's everything I got for you tonight, guys. Take good care. The flashcards are also posted at Patreon if you want to download the those sketches and whatnot. I really think the energy map and that whole process of how to do reframing is an essential cognitive skill. Yeah, there is a picture, the picture of the relaxed person in the shade of the tree fishing in the stream. Yeah, there's always another fish coming. I'll find that for you. It's from a contemporary artist, but done in the traditional style, and it's just absolutely catches that spirit beautifully. I'll find that and post it again because it's really a nice picture. I'll post that on Patreon, and we'll talk about that little guy tomorrow. Okay, so take good care and enjoy. Keep your wrist measured and your powder dry. I'll get this processed and posted tonight before I go to bed. Take good care.